I'm just saying, I was talking to some friends and I was trying to tell them, shonen never was a genre to be in touch with feelings and shit. Like, I was talking to this girl and she was talking about how every anime is the same. It's just screaming and hooting and hollering and all this testosterone. When ain't nobody, really trying to pull her heartstrings or say anything meaningful, You want to know what she told me? Just check this out. This is what she said. She said,
Chainsaw Man had a really cool aesthetic, had suspenseful horror, and its art was weird but creative. Its fights were bombastic and its humor was definitely distinct, which is why I liked it, and I guarantee you that's why the general and the manga crowd likes it. But as I've gone over in the last couple of episodes in the series, the way fandoms move has gotten a lot more complicated over the years. Firstly, in comparison to, let's say, the Big Three's long-form storytelling coded in nostalgia, My Hero's Western influences and tone, and JJK's anti-shonen nature, CSM is this weird middle ground where it certainly is a battle shonen, but pretty much has none of the qualities that would align it with that genre. None of its tropes, none of its conventions. Its soul is very different from the soul of a typical battle manga. It's a Western shonen jump manga that refuses to act like one, as opposed to, say, Black Clover or Demon Slayer, which are so unabashedly shonen that their popularity makes sense to me. The amount of assistants Fujimoto had that would go on to make their own manga is something very inspirational actually. And while I have problems with most of them, whether it be Spy Family's resistance towards plot progression, the ass pulls that act counter to Jigoro Kuraku's amazing tone and pretty good character writing, Dan Dan's adoration for love triangles that makes the main couple's dynamic hard to be patient over, and the fact that Centuria seems like a very beautiful story, but unfortunately it's 2025 and we left reading in the past. Regardless, at least at one point all of these manga knew what they were and wanted to be, and stayed consistent with that identity for a majority of its run. Dandadan itself is also an experiment, since the author had no exposure to shoujo writing tropes until doing research for his manga, but its identity as a zany rom-com with major sci-fi and spiritual elements never feels diverged from. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of the Fujoshi-esque internet dwellers who tend to make things seem smarter than intended chose Chainsaw Man. Most of them just wanted to be different, and you can see this in the way most of them talk about normal shonen, or manga that isn't some shoujo fluff from the 80s. Cause otherwise, shonen battle manga fans obsessing over a story that is fundamentally so different from shonen battle manga is just an equation I personally can't solve. Which brings me to my second point. Putting my feelings about a lot of the popular battle shonen aside, they were at the very least superbly high quality at one point in their run. And breaking away from what makes the genre so identifiable doesn't mean your work won't be. But if you're going to ignore the very things that are at the heart of the genre you're putting yourself in to tell a new story, it better be specific, passionate, and sustainable. But Chainsaw Man simply isn't. Everything Fujimoto could say about himself, every story he would want to make for himself, and everything he wishes to satirize was done in all of his previous works. Chainsaw Man is not a work he's gleaned from himself, it's a work he's gleaned from his influences, his interests. CSM is an experimental work, meant to emulate abusive and serial case studies Fujimoto was never a part of. It's no wonder then that the story feels like it's coasting through writer's block. A story that's not about you is very hard to write, which explains the deteriorating quality of the series. Consequently, it's as if the worse a manga gets, the more parasocial and obsessed the fandom gets. So I guess in that regard, Chainsaw Man really isn't that different from the things I've covered. Regardless, I still got some things I want to say. Psst, I see dead people. Chainsaw Man has a lot of themes about the act of intimacy, sexual assault, and how Denji doesn't know where the line is drawn between the two. He feels these sexual tendencies, but has no idea what to do with them, or what they say about him as a person, and when he finally gets an idea, he's deeply ashamed about it. The thing is, this story goes beyond having themes of sex and just leaving it at that. The story itself is unabashedly horny, and it's never clear if the sexual nature of the story is for writing purposes or for Fujimoto's own self-gratification. At one point it was clear. Part 1 was very much a story about learning about one's own sexuality, or at least the trajectory of the series, plus where Denji's arc was going, certainly implied that for me. But now, that sense of sincerity and sensitivity are now made less impactful, either for the sake of humor, or something way darker. When Yoru rubs her ass against Denji's crotch, is it to cement herself as a femme fatale, or is it because Fuji enjoys a lap dance? When Yoru jerks Denji off, I want to believe it's for plot reasons, but it's so grotesque I can't help but feel like somebody on the staff is getting off to it. Why did he write this? When Denji is forced to be subservient and proceeds to be sat on or swallow a squid's tentacles or plays toy for Yoru's deviousness, it feels like an unfortunate regression, but at the same time, the punchline to a sex joke that part 1 would have never told. Which is why Chainsaw Man feels like it's in a rut. Is Fujimoto trading writing for his own enjoyment, or is the plot going in circles the point? And if it is there not a better, more mature, restrained, and more importantly, more well-drawn way of conveying its purposeful regression? People get mad when others make fun of Chainsaw Man, but I mean,
look at it! Look at it! Look at it!
Get off me!
Everything's a joke now. The cast, the characters, the story. Because when you make a story that, unlike Look Back, is fundamentally not about you, but an attempt at a faux abuse story in a shonen genre flip, after a while, you just run out of things to pull from. So your series just becomes Family Guy.
Dude, why do you keep trying to make Hitler work?
Christ, if I had a nickel for every creator in 2025 who was too porn-brained to operate a craft they once excelled at, well, you know the quote, don't you? And you know what's crazy? Not only is there a precedent for dopamine-deprived weirdos in the manga industry, a lot of them are successful, and a greater number of them are very talented in spite, or maybe even because they're weirdos. Being a degenerate and being able to write for Japanese teenagers is a match made in heaven over in the East. But I don't know, man, the way Fujimoto does it has no passion. Maybe because he doesn't fully commit to it, as he's still trying to mask his degeneracy as plot. Maybe it's that the other weirdos have found a way to make their weirdness plot relevant, or at least one and done moments were just supposed to fly by, so mangakas can collect their ADHD and focus. Maybe the artistry of his hoardiness just isn't hitting. Whatever it is, if Denji isn't gonna say it, then I'm gonna say it. Please stop! When Part 2 first started, it was the delightful change of pace. Seemingly taking cues from JoJo, we went from a parody of Western action movies to a parody of shoujo rom-com, and while it definitely wasn't as exciting as what came before, it had the same sense of character work Part 1 had. Asa was a very relatable main character whose insecurities were palpable, and Denji's sparseness allowed his appearances to feel more special. However, I was already starting to feel certain issues that might take on worse forms later, like how short the chapters felt to read, the amount of breaks Fujimoto was taking which made the story feel slower, Nayuta's gag character tendencies getting in the way of more time spent between Asa and Denji, chapters ending on sex jokes. Part 2 definitely started to bring up interesting directions for the rest of the series, but Part 2 has been very shaky even before the immediate drop in quality when we switched main characters. Unlike a JoJo, this part's identity wasn't even cemented yet before it started falling off. Part 2 was only fairly good for 20 chapters when Asa was the protagonist, and the formula shakeup had real potential, and even the quality of those chapters pale in comparison to every other first impression we've ever gotten for a Fujimoto project. But that's kind of what I want to get at. Chainsaw Man Part 1 was very good for its own specific reasons. Paneling, humor, set pieces, its mastery at tonal whiplash. It was an honest-to-God horror show, but none of that is necessarily sustainable. What was good about Chainsaw Man Part 1 cannot be manufactured again and again, in the same way that what was good about a Black Clover or Naruto could. It was something that was meant to exist at a time, and whether that be through other projects or a changing up of the status quo, we were supposed to creatively move on and grow. But a lot of Part 2's problems stem from trying to recreate the sense of emotional dread while not really committing to it, while also not drawing it that well. Furthermore, those things I liked about Part 1 are things people never talk about anymore. Chainsaw Man's fanbase is not made up of action-hungry meatheads who are in love with the commitment to an aesthetic and CSM's stylish way of interpreting boyhood. The days where Chainsaw Man's fanbase crossed over with JJKs are long gone, and even then all they did was fight with each other. Now, people only really talk about how it's not like other shonen. This manga actually says something meaningful. It's gotten so bad that there are people that celebrate the main character not raping someone.
You know, that's romantic.
Like, what the f are we doing? This is again a case where I wish people were more honest about what they liked. There's nothing more honest than saying you like cool shit because it's cool, but I express my frustration at people's embarrassment over this fact. Because Once again, being cool isn't enough. Every story has to be this profound and deep piece of work, because otherwise, well, it might as well be meaningless. And just as My Hero Academia fans don very performative political personas, the Chainsaw Man fanbase is somehow worse in this regard. In the same way that right-winged fascism oppresses any sort of individuality and has sucked the life out of fandom culture in more ways than one, Chainsaw Man fans are so woke that they accidentally turn around to judging those who aren't as radicalized in their approach to analysis or how they behave on the site. They're very pretentious about their leftist ideology, not seeing the irony in how they belittle others in the fanbase when they're male or straight, or how they objectify male characters in fiction, or how they fixate on Yuri-esque relationships, or shoujo in general. Again, not seeing the irony in that these are what unfortunately named dude bros do, just with the opposite sex. I would show you the tweets, but I'm good, man. I may have muted or blocked every individual like this and refused to dig back into the hellhole. You see, pseudo-intellectuals annoy me, MHA fans are funny to laugh at, pedophiles are an easy dunk, but Chainsaw Man's fans? There's nothing fun about picking on them. They're legit annoying. And the Twitter specifically is like a ghetto with territories I've found. In one corner you have the gooners, people who are involved with Medium for their own sexual gratification, whether it be their unconcerned fascination with lolly culture, their obsession with cutesy waifu culture, or overbearing fujoshi culture. You also have the enjoyers, people who mindlessly consume without much forethought to whether the media is actually of quality or not. If it is, well, you wouldn't know. They're too busy chastising you for thinking otherwise to tell you why. Some justify this behavior by how cool a manga is, some by how smart it is. Whatever the case, they are entities that automatically give out 10 out of 10s and judge you for not doing the same. So how does this all fit together? Well, what if I told you that Chainsaw Man has a fan base, a collective of individuals with a little bit of everything, a bit of bad from every world. People have turned Chainsaw Man from a meaningful coming-of-age story, with symbolism that the author himself is happy to admit exists and in what forms, to a sort of postmodern revolutionary commentary on the world of today's ideas of feminism, sex, mental health, and how Chainsaw Man wants to comment on the corporate West and the commodification of war and... Okay, yeah, you lost me. I have to once again reiterate, it's not that some of these things aren't there. It's not even that the fact I think analyzing something to this extent is wrong. If you want an overall thesis for the Shounen Reclaim's first season, I guess it would be that, for me, there's a threshold of how much a story should be good before I start throwing all that subtext and shit at it. Because not only can fans exaggerate or make up subtext that wasn't intended, that subtext is meaningless if the actual writing is bad. And as long as fans continue to be annoying about the subject, and as they start to appear more and more inconsiderate and mindless when it comes to media consumption, I feel all the more better about this threshold. It's a good thing then that Chainsaw Man for the most part is, or at least was, good. I just don't think that it was so good that it warrants all of this. There was a time where I really enjoyed Chainsaw Man, its introspection and slower moments contrasted with its spectacle and faster moments, the struggle of trying to learn about yourself when everyone around you is almost trying to discourage that. It exists in a long line of stories that tell their audiences that maybe those who are trusted in such an intimate and familial way might not have your best interests at heart. It was good, man. And there's a good amount of Part 2's beginning and Part 2's recent endeavors that I still like, but I'm just so tired of the cycle. Audiences today simply can never admit that their favorite story has morphed into something different. They're afraid that recognizing the flaws in what they like can invalidate their own experiences and attachments to it, because the media has consumed their central identity. So they try to cover these flaws with hidden meanings and subtext that you just don't understand if you're someone who dislikes the series. Chainsaw Man is in its gas leak period. It's obvious in the writing and the art that the passion just isn't all the way there, and when it is, it's maybe put in the wrong places. The handjob chapter is somehow one of the best illustrated chapters in Part 2's latter half, and I don't know what to make of that. Fandom's becoming a cult is unfortunately not a new phenomenon. Hell, I've seen people collect pieces of media like Infinity Stones to add to their collection of Tumblr core or some sort of dark shonen moniker. It's just especially ridiculous with Chainsaw Man because of how different it is from the rest. So different, I'm unable to box it into a specific core that would appeal to an audience that moves like these other symbiotic fandoms do. It is actually an insane phenomenon, and the fact I've only seen such sheep-esque aptitudes during Chainsaw Man's weaker endeavors just makes my eyes roll. Like, surely we could find a different series to be pick-me's over. I mean, I hear that Ichi the Witch is currently taking Fandom applications.
I just finished watching Kill la Kill, and one of the first things that comes to my mind is that niggas lied to me. Niggas on the timeline, niggas on group chats. They sat here and told me that fucking Mappa was best suited to animate Chainsaw Man. That if it was Trigger, we didn't need Trigger. We didn't need Shaft. They said, nah, we don't need that, bro. Chainsaw Man's more emotional. It's fine if they want to go to cinema route. Are you fucking kidding me, bro? I'm seeing Kill la Kill and my mind is blown. I'm like, bro, I'm reading the manga of Chainsaw Man. I'm thinking, yo, if these scenes are animated by Trigger, especially the way like Trigger does their shit, this is peak. Like, niggas tell me, no, we want to see some cinema shit. Nigga, I don't want to see no cinema shit. I want to watch anime, nigga. And it would seem like the studio fucking agrees with me. They couldn't do this the first time. What were they thinking, man? Like, they just want to be trolling me and rage baiting me every single time, man.
Art is a beautiful thing. I know it can come across as pessimistic and bitter in my videos, but I genuinely do believe that. I just hate how it can be treated. A breeding ground where authors can uplift the idea of stagnation and an audience who loves these stories for that reason. The way the ignorant, the smart alecks, the perverted, or millennials that infantilize themselves and victimize themselves over the dumbest of discourses has left the medium with an audience that cares not about the actual story, especially if that story isn't the same as what it once was, but people who only care for their own headcanons, their enjoyment, their toxicity, and their ego. When popular battle shonen is bad, it can feel like something you've devoted yourself to, hyperfixated over, has betrayed you. But when its fandom sucks too, and you have a group of people telling you how you feel is invalid, it can make things so much more difficult to deal with. An overly positive YouTube culture that discourages criticism and seemingly only allows 5-hour videos about some innocuous piece of media being this life-changing phenomenon. Forums and customers thoughtlessly churning out money and obsessing over whatever IP, company, or studio they love or stan. Fan bases full of political extremists, some not even knowing it because institutions bigger than them have instilled ignorance and stubbornness. People who go from fandom to fandom and bring toxicity and annoying beliefs with them. Social media platforms that encourage connectivity, full of people who would rather reside in cultic echo chambers. Everybody I talk to about this, either in real life or on the platform, tells me that I shouldn't have expected anything different, that the web has always been a breeding ground for toxicity. Maybe that's true, but I think there was a time where people really did consider what they were consuming, people who evaluated what they liked and disliked, and obviously not everyone could articulate what they were thinking, but regardless of some from the general audience being unable to explain why they like something, they still had their reasons, personal or things more tangible. Now, the internet has regressed and become a place where toxic positivity has run rampant, and the only people that are left are forced to keep the shtick going, otherwise they too will come under fire for the sin of disliking something. The internet, because of its assured freedom of expression and extreme connectivity, was such an important place for me. Now that same place has rejected people like me, and yet, here I am, still making videos. Honestly, given the audience of vitriol I've created and the heartbreak it's left behind, the easier solution would be just to walk away from all of the stress and the effort. But unfortunately, it's just not an option for me. Because I've seen it. Chainsaw Man is very relatable, not in the coming of age sense either. I've already talked about how Chainsaw Man is impersonal. It's not a diary, it's not a thought bubble either, it's an experiment. And the experiment worked for a time, but for a cinephile with seemingly so many influences, ideas, and topics he would love to cover, do I really believe that Chainsaw Man is the work he wants to be doing? And that's the question I always ask myself when in these conditions. All I can do is ask why. I mean, I know what it's like to be rejected, so maybe Hori tried his best to stop that from happening. I know what it's like to want to change the landscape, but maybe not executing it in the right way. And I know that burnout, or in Chainsaw Man's case, writer's block, constantly pains me. When you're like me and you recognize the problem with 3 of the biggest post-Big 3 shonen, whether that be MHA's fear of rejection, JJK's lack of respect for the art form, or Chainsaw Man's burnout plaguing an entire passion project, and you yourself are a creator, I feel like you have to keep going, lest you end up in the same boat creatively. This is why I think it's so important to be honest about the quality and the state of a given work. For future storytellers, audiences who want to expand their palette, or people who just want to consume things better. Because when a story doesn't work, we can learn a lot from the why, and I have learned a lot. I've learned that the only way you can remain passionate for a medium or a hobby or a vision, especially ones that have changed for the worse over time, is by reclaiming that feeling for yourself, re-examining what made you fall in love in the first place, because otherwise, the voices, the culture, the apathy will just consume you.